The theme that runs through both of my plays that are opening in the next couple of weeks, Wednesday's Child and Closely Related Keys, is the theme of the other, how we fear the other, how we use our prejudices and our expectations to fear the other. And both plays ask that we bridge the gap and we find what's common between all of us rather than the differences. Hi, this is Wendy Graf, and I have been so blessed to have two wonderful productions opening in the next couple of weeks. Closely Related Keys opens August 27th at International City Theater in Long Beach, and Wednesday's Child, a world premiere, opens at the Lab Theater Project in Tampa, Florida, but it is also available for streaming and on demand. And if you want to learn more about both of the plays, watch this video. The theater experience is different because it's a collective experience. You know, you're sitting there as an audience member, you're sitting there in the dark, and all of you become connected as you're watching, as you're watching this story play out in real time, and the audience, it's feeding the performers, and the performers are feeding the actors. And I remember one of the best ways that I can even describe it is I remember when I saw Warhorse in in New York, and it got to the point where I was like holding the hands of the people sitting next to me, and I didn't even know them, but we were so engaged and into it. You don't get that. You certainly don't get that on Zoom, and you certainly don't get that on film. Maybe a bit on film if you're in a theater, but there's kind of a wall there that there's not in theater. And, for the playwright, you're sitting in the audience, listening to the audience, listening to where they get, where they react, listening to, are they dropping out? Are they coughing and dropping their candy or what, whatever. And the actors feed off the audience's energy. So yes, it's a completely different experience. It's a communal artistic experience that you don't find anywhere else, and that we've missed so much. And I think I spoke to you the last time about doing the play virtually that I had done on stage. Is that what we talked about the last time? Right. And, it was interesting because that was like way back at the beginning. But then, as time went on and all we had were these Zoom readings, it became more and more difficult to get a sense of the play because you couldn't get the actors' reactions to each other. There was no interaction. Everybody was just in their little box. And it became very hard to get involved in the play. And, people get up and walk away and say, oh, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and they let it keep running and things like that. So it's a completely different experience, one that we've missed so much, and one that I'm so looking forward to on Friday, when Closely Related Keys opens. And I think everybody else feels the same. When we were in the theater for casting, and we all walked into the theater, and we had all been out of a theater for so many months, it was like Christmas. Everyone was so happy and hugging each other and just overjoyed to be there. I start to get an idea in a variety of ways. I hear a story, I read something in the newspaper. I mean, it's a million different, I go on a trip. A lot of my plays have come out of trips that I've been on. And so I start with that, and I usually walk around with the idea for a long time, kind of letting it incubate. And I don't know really where it's going to go. And then it either goes somewhere or it doesn't go anywhere, And then when I start to form an idea, someone said that finding a play is like taking a block of marble and chipping it away until you find the play. So what I usually start out doing is, once I start to get it on paper, then the most important thing is to hear it. And I'll either take it to a writing group, or I will have, some of my go-to friends to come, actors and go-to other writers, come and sit around the table and have lunch and listen to it and to see where we go from there. The process of writing is just like writing and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. And then it's just like tons of drafts. There might be a workshop, which is always really helpful. There might be a staged reading, which is always really helpful. And then if we're lucky enough to get a production, if it's a brand new play, we don't completely find the play until it's up on its feet in rehearsal. And with a brand new play, things can change a lot in rehearsal. And I'm always there for the rehearsal process on a brand new play. Now, this particular play, Closely Related Keys, already has had a production. And after the production closed, I took what I learned in the production and I rewrote it again. And then, this is kind of interesting. This has never happened to me before, because it was COVID and a lot of things weren't going on. Someone who I work with said, "Why don't you write it into a screenplay?" And I was like, no, I can't write a screenplay. But I ended up writing it into a screenplay, and I found a lot of new things in it. And then I went back and I added it into the play script. And even then, now with this new production, I sat in on the first table read, and there was, of course, some tweaks and some questions and all that, and there has been all the way through. But I did it from afar. When it's a play that has been done before, I don't sit there like it's a world premiere play. I stay in touch, and if they need me, like, to rewrite something, then I'll say, okay, but I need to hear it. If I need to hear it, if it's significant, and then I'll come and I'll listen, and I'll say, okay, let's do this, and let's do a little bit of this, and let's take out that, and all that sort of thing. And it's an evolving, living thing. I don't think it's ever finished. And I think I had told you back with Unemployed Elephants that that's published. But after we did it virtually, I learned some new things even still. And I thought to myself, gee, I kind of wish it wasn't published, because I could add these things in. I've always known about it, and it's a wonderful theater, and they do wonderful work, and I've seen work that they've done and gone down and seen productions and everything. I just I never pursued it, but the stage manager of ICT, who had worked on one of the workshops of Closely Related Keys, contacted me and said, "Why don't you send me the play? I'm going to send it to Karen Desai, who's the artistic director." And I was like, okay, fine, because most, 99 out of 100 are rejections, so I sent it to him, and I forgot about it. And she contacted me, and this was it was supposed to go up last season. And I was so thrilled. It's a big, beautiful theater. And I was thrilled about working there. And I was also thrilled about being able to work out some of the kinks and the problems from the last production. I saved all the reviews, and I worked with people and talked to people. And, whenever there's like a common theme, that a lot of people say, I think, okay, that's something that didn't work. So I rewrote the play again. And then COVID struck. And I was so devastated. We all were so devastated. And that, I figured that was that. And then when things started to look like they were improving, Karen contacted me for this season, and she said, how would you feel if we put it up this season? And I said, great, I'm thrilled, I'm so happy. So that's how it happened. And we've been holding our breath all along. There's all these rules from equity and from all the other unions. And, you have to jump through all these hoops and everything because of COVID. And it was really a play that needed to be produced live. It's very theatrical, and it wouldn't translate well to Zoom or virtual. So we've been holding our breath. But they have a COVID captain, and they take their temperature every day, and all the actors, the crew, everyone involved had to be vaccinated, and they have to fill out health questionnaires every day, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been a really long journey. And, now that I can see the end of the journey, the light at the tunnel, I'm just like, okay, come on, hold your breath. We're going to make it. Well, I wrote it in 2012. And at first I started out that I was going to do kind of a Miss Saigon, Madame Butterfly thing with an American soldier and a woman in Iraq, and that they kind of, Miss Saigon kind of thing. So I started doing a lot of research and, listening to what people said, et cetera, et cetera. And then I decided, then because of like in Miss Saigon where they have a child, I was going to incorporate that. And then all of a sudden I thought, maybe it's the other daughter's story that she finds out that she has a half sister in Iraq, and they had thought that everyone was dead. But the half sister in Iraq turns up, and she finds out about her. And then I wanted to include, in those years, in 2012, the Middle Easterner was the boogeyman in the United States, right? Osama bin Laden and the terrorists and the people who blew up 9/11, and there was just an unbelievable amount of Islamophobia going on. So I wanted to do it from the audience's perspective, and also the main character's perspective, that she's just using her beliefs and stereotypes to say, oh, this girl's a terrorist. And, so that I wanted the audience to sit in the same place as the main character and test their beliefs and stereotypes. And then I had to give a reason why the other daughter, this daughter, not the Iraqi sister, was so sensitive about this. And I came up with a wonderful reason, but I don't want to tell you what it is because it's going to blow the plot point. The play opens up in 2010, right, before the 10th anniversary of 9/11, before the capture of Osama bin Laden, and it opens up in New York, and we meet Julia, an African-American, very high-powered attorney who, is moving up the career ladder and is very focused on her career. And she's also having kind of a secret relationship with her boss, who's not African American, who's white. It's an interracial relationship, and everything's great. The world is her oyster. She's just been assigned to this big case that's moving up, moving up her career on the ladder. And her father, who she's been estranged from for a very long time, shows up in New York wanting to talk to her. And he says to her, "Julia, I have something to tell you." And she said, "What?" And he says, "You have a sister. She's coming to the United States. I'm sponsoring her, and she's a musician, and she has an interview at Juilliard, and she's your family." And she's like, "She's not my family. I don't have anything to do with this." So she tells her father, "I don't want anything to do with this. This is your deal." And one night, very late at night, the Iraqi sister shows up at her door. And that's how the play starts. The team is like a dream team. I've worked with the set designer and the lighting designer many times before, and they are just top. It's beautiful. And the lighting designer has been sending pictures of the set and the lighting and everything. Now, I have not been involved. I have not physically been there. I trust this team. I trust Karen Desai. I trust the director. I was there for casting. It's a wonderful cast. I've worked a few times with the lead actress. In fact, I was the one who recommended her. And but they already had her on their list. That's how good she is. And because it's not a brand new play, and because it's a very abbreviated rehearsal period, 3 weeks, it's not, I'm not involved on a day-to-day basis. I'm not going down there. I'm not watching it. I'm not seeing it. I'm trusting them, and they're in constant touch with me. If they question something. Just this morning, I got an email about, "This line is still feeling weird to us. What do you suggest?" kind of thing. So, I guess, I have a lot of confidence in the whole team, and in Karen, and in the theater, and we'll see what happens. To be honest with you, some of my plays I have done out of town, and it hasn't been the world premiere. And a lot of them I went to see them. And I came for opening night. And they were all wonderful. Sometimes the playwright can get like a little too involved. When you're still working out the story and it's a first time production, it's a different story. But at this point, I know what works, I know what doesn't, I know how to answer questions if they don't understand something. I know how to say, "Okay, that sounds fair, sure, cut it, or change this line." But I'm not going to see it until opening night. What I hope they get out of this production is that it will encourage them to grapple with all their own beliefs and stereotypes, and serve as an inspiration to bridge the gap between cultures. Now, something has happened with this play, and that's Afghanistan. And oddly enough, the words in the play about getting out of Iraq are like the exact words that we've been hearing on the TV news all week. So I'm realizing one of the questions this morning was about that. I'm realizing that people are going to see this through a different lens, having, excuse me, Afghanistan just happening right now as we speak. But I think the overall the overall takeaway. I never want to give answers to the audience. I don't deal in answers. I deal in questions. And what I want them to take away is I want them to question their own stereotypes and beliefs, and go across the street and have a glass of wine afterwards and talk about it and see how it applies to their life and what they can do to make the world a better place. What am I going to look for in this? I'm going to try very hard to sit back and take it in and look at the whole thing, and not like focus on, oh, she didn't walk over here at that. Oh, she said that line wrong. Oh, not to focus on the minutia, but to focus on the overall. You have all different kinds of reactions as a playwright. I mean, I remember one time I went to see it was like a fifth production of something that I did. And I hadn't heard the play or visited the play for a few years. And I sat back and I watched it and I was like, how did I ever write this? Wow. Or this girl is terrific, and I don't even remember writing those words. Oh, I love how they interpreted this differently than they had before. So I would have to say that it's different every time. Sometimes you're more nervous and you're watching it and you're focusing on the minutia, which is really not a good idea. Now, when I did Unemployed Elephants, it was the first time that I had ever done a comedy. So I was listening to the laughs. And when people weren't laughing, I was like, why are they laughing? And I remember my son came to see it and he was sitting behind me and I turned around and I said, why aren't you laughing? And he's like, Mom, just let me watch the play, okay? So I hope to be just an audience member. And I hope to feel proud, and I think that I will. And I hope that the audience, it's meaningful for the audience. Aside from the fact it's an absolutely beautiful production of it, it's so timely now, it's scary. I mean, it mirrors exactly what's going on in Afghanistan right now. And some of the lines out of it are like, when I was listening to the news, I thought, oh my God, that's a line right out of the play. I think, once again, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And so I hope not only are that we doomed to repeat what, going into another country and, doing what we did with Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan. I hope we've learned something from that, but also I hope we've learned something about the divisiveness and the racial and religious and cultural and moral divisiveness. The country is so much more divisive at this time than they were at the original production in 2014. And I think that you can't look at this play now without looking at through the lens of the last 5-7 years that wasn't there. I mean, before we were looking at it, we were looking backwards through the lens of the Bush administration, but now we're looking at it through a completely different lens. And I'll be very curious to see what people think and what people walk away with, if it's any different now than it was then. Because the basic thing is the same. We're so divided. There's such a feeling of the other. And so much more now. I mean, I think more now in my lifetime than ever before. And I just hope that this can bridge the gap a little bit and let people think about things and think about where they're at and think about where the world is at And is this really the world that we want to leave for our children and our grandchildren? Theater is important. Theater not only feeds our soul artistically and beautifully, but it also affects and promotes law and culture and modes and what's going on in the country. It was interesting that I have a friend who was the head of the law school at University of Oklahoma, and University of Oklahoma in the spring was doing the theater department was doing a play called Row by Lisa Loomer, and they asked him to come in and talk to them. He was a constitutional law professor, talk to them about Roe v. Wade. So after he did, then they asked him to come back and talk about how theater can influence policy, law, culture, etc. So he called me and he said, I don't really go to the theater, and I know that you're very versed in this. Could you give me like a little tutorial? So I gave him a tutorial, and I cited examples for him, how this play has influenced that, and Angels in America, how influencing that was on both our culture and laws and everything. And then he went in and he talked to them again, and he said it was a big success, and they were very impressed because they thought that I knew a lot about the theater, which I don't. But I mean, the theater holds a mirror up to ourselves, and we need to look in that mirror. And sometimes it's tough. Some plays are tough, and they ask really tough questions, and that people may not want to answer. But I think it's so important. It's crucial. Theater is civilization to me. Well, I just hope that everybody in Southern California, in the area, will come and see it. It's a big, beautiful theater. It's observing all kinds of safe protocol for COVID. They're, skipping rows, skipping seats, masked, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody's vaccinated. And I think right now, I think especially since last week, when all this has been going on about Afghanistan, and people have questions, and people have no outlet except for to maybe post on Facebook, wow, this is really wrong, or whatever, that maybe this will help them engage in a dialogue about what they're feeling, and help them sort out their feelings about it. And my other play that's opening in the next 2 weeks is Wednesday's Child, which is opening on September 2nd at the Lab Theater Project in Tampa, Florida, but it is also available for streaming and on demand. I first learned about the Lab Theater Project because in 2012 in Tampa, they did a production of my play Behind the Gates. And one of the actors in the play was an actor named Owen Robertson. And they all lived in Tampa, all the actors. And after the play, I kind of stayed in touch on Facebook with a few of the actors. And Owen went on a few years later, a number of years later, to open up his own theater, the Lab Theater Project. And we stayed in touch and everything. He only does new work. So nothing that I had really was relevant at the time. So, and he said from time to time, ooh, send me this, it looks interesting, or something like that. And he's really smart, really perceptive, good director. And I had written this play, Wednesday's Child, and I had not a lot of success on with getting it produced here in LA or in Southern California. I think it's too not liberal for California, and it's too liberal for the other part of the country. So it was kind of a hard sell. And Owen said, "Send it to me. I'm kind of interested in this. This piques my interest." So I sent it to him. And then in the meantime, he asked me if I'd like to spend this summer being a mentor in his playwriting summer intensive, where I get one young playwright and I mentor him from page to stage. And I said, sure, I'd love to. Because I feel like, I enjoy doing that and I like giving back. So I started working with this young playwright. And then Owen said to me, I want to see if we can put it on next season. Would you like to have us do a reading of it? And they've gone back into the theater the whole time in Florida. I said, sure. So he put together a reading of it and he Zoomed me in. And I was like, wow, that's really great. This is really working. And he said, yeah, I really think we're going to put on next season. And then a couple of weeks later, he called me and he said, our September play just fell out. And since it's a one-woman show, how would you feel about us putting up Wednesday's Child? And I was like, sure, I'd love to. And I usually don't like to do a new play out of town like that, but he's kept me Zoomed in to the rehearsals, and he's an excellent director, and he's all, I'm very confident he's on the same page with me about everything, and he wants my input. And so that's how it happened. The reason I wrote it was, I admit, during 2016 to 2020, I was terrified for the country, and I didn't understand, again, the divisiveness. I didn't understand why so many people seem to be supporting an administration and leaders who seemed so anti-American to me, so anti the rule of law, anti-democracy. And my son, who is a producer at CBS News, I'd say around 2017, sent me this article from the Washington Post about a young woman who worked at a chicken plant in, somewhere in Pennsylvania or something. And she felt outnumbered she was the only person there who spoke English, and she felt outnumbered and scared, and again, the other of the immigrants, all the Latin immigrants who worked there. And, she felt like, she and her family felt like, they were losing their majority status and all the things that comes along with it. And he said, read this article and then maybe you'll better understand the other side. And I said, okay. So I read the article and I was really kind of interested. It really piqued my interest. So then I started doing more research on, people who had lost their homes and the mortgage crisis, and, the plants closed and the GM plant closed. And all these people were they just were alienated, and they just had they didn't recognize America anymore. And that's why they wanted to make America great again. They wanted to go back to the way it was, and they hadn't moved along with the times, and they were threatened and scared about what America was starting to look like to them. So then I read Hillbilly Elegy, and I got some more feeling from that. And I read a lot of articles, did a lot of research. And then the story started to kind of emerge for me and come out of me. And I did it in a one actor format, because I had done that before with two other plays, No Word in Guyanese for me and All American Girl, and I felt very confident writing in that format. So it came out of that, and I wrote the whole thing, and then I got a couple, I pulled in a couple of actors. Hey, you want to read it for me? And we started working on it, trimming and moving things around and that kind of thing. And then they went on to do other work. And then I wanted to get it into a certain festival here in LA. And the director said to me, right now, while we're in Zoom format, how would you feel about writing it 4 characters, playing different roles? And I said, okay, let's try it. So we did try it, and we had a private reading. And again, I learned, every time you have a reading, you learn more and more and more about the play, especially if you have smart actors and a smart director who gives you their feedback. So now I had the 4-character version and I had the 1-woman version. And Owen was very taken by the 1-woman version, which I admit is a lot more theatrical and magical than the 4-character version. And the rest is history. The play opens with Britt, our main character, in line, walking down the halls of New Mexico's prison. And she's about to get out after 15 years. So now we're saying, oh my God, what happened? How did this happen? It's a how did you get here from there play. And as she goes, then she gets on the bus and she's about to go home, but nothing's the same as it was before. The story unfolds and we find out how did she get here from there. Owen Robertson is directing it, and he is just a wonderful director. He's totally on the same page as me. He just gets it. And that's why, that was one of the reasons why I agreed to letting him do it. And all his ideas, I think, are really great. The actress, I don't know. He cast it. And, it's a process. It's still 2 weeks out. It's a process. It's a huge chunk of a story. It's, she's the only actress up there, and she plays maybe 10 other characters. So he's been working with her on switching from one character to another and, having specifics for each character. And he's been working with her on the arc of the journey. What I want to get out is, again, first of all, I think it holds up a mirror to a part of society that has been ignored and deserves to be heard, not just in their little groups, but in our West Coast liberal bubble or our New York liberal bubble, our artistic liberal bubble. And, maybe again, if we can understand people, listening leads to understanding, leads to compassion. And we could just use a lot more compassion these days. We're so divided. And maybe by watching this, people will start to think about ways that we can become less divided. And the toxicity that's coming from this divisiveness. They've streamed me into rehearsals and everything. I'm really interested in hearing what the reaction is there in Tampa, Florida. Again, the play is going to have a completely different reaction there than it would have had and has had in Los Angeles. So that's the thing that interests me the most. And when he first said that, you know, he was going to do a reading, he said, should we invite people? I said, yes, totally invite people, because I'm fascinated to see what other people's reaction is to this. I think that in Florida, as in other places, there's a lot of divisiveness. And, you know, back 10 years ago, the boogeyman, the other, was, you know, Islamic terrorists and people from the Middle East and all that. And in the last 5 years, the boogeyman has become the other. For the left, the boogeyman has become the right. And for the right, the boogeyman has become the left. And again, I think if we listen to each other and we listen to this play, again, I hope it holds up a mirror to all our behavior, and people can start thinking about ways that they can maybe bridge this divisiveness. The Lab Theater Project is very important because it only does new work. It's a champion of new work. And, you know, it's a small theater, it's very hands-on, and it gives playwrights the chance to develop their work. They also, as I said before, they also have this playwrights class that's gone all summer. And I mean, I've worked very intensely with this kid. He sends me pages every week. We discuss the pages. I give him notes. We talk about what's coming next. And he said, well, thank you so much for doing this for me. I said, listen, I wish I had someone like me to do it for me. You know, it's so important, especially when you're starting out, because you have no idea of what you're doing. And, you know, if it's right, if it's not right, if it's you know, and I said to him, if it comes from you, it'll be right. Just keep going. Don't worry about if I'm going to like it, or, you know, if the audience is going to like it. And I think these are important lessons for young playwrights to learn. They're also learning structure. They're learning how to start a play. Now they're teaching them how to write an outline. Now, I said to Owen before the class started, I said, I don't write an outline anymore. And he said, will you kind of have an intrinsic outline inside of you at this point, which I do. And he said, but you know, when they're starting out, they've got to start out at the basics. They got to start out at ground zero and go from there. So I think it's just a terrific theater, and it's beautiful for a small theater. The set is beautiful. It seems like a real family affair. Everybody pitches in and builds the set and paints the set and does the graphic and does the lighting. And these are very important theaters for young playwrights and for places to get started, because nobody goes right to Broadway. I think there's another aspect of this play that I think is very interesting, and it doesn't offer any answers. Again, it only asks what if. And our main character, Britt, starts out wanting all the right things, what we all want: home, love, family, security, and to do good. But painful events in her life drive her in a different direction. And I've always been interested in the choices people make, what makes them turn right instead of turn left, so to speak, and how does that apply to our behavior? This is Wendy Graf again, and if you enjoyed our conversation this morning about Closely Related Keys and Wednesday's Child, I hope you will be able to see one or both of the shows. See you at the theater.